New, innovative, resourceful, and progressive are just a few words that could be used to describe this year's Banker Award winners, Dennis and Kathy Anderson. While these words often describe actions associated with the future, the words heritage and legacy also come to mind because of his ability to learn from history. Dennis and Kathy will be the second generation in succession to be honored as recipients of the Bankers Award. In 1992, Dennis's parents, Kenneth and Colleen Anderson, along with his brother Brian, were recognized for their contributions to conservation. Their family has a history of being innovative. Dennis and Kathy continue that legacy. While Dennis is always looking to the future and ways to improve, which include researching new and progressive techniques, he also believes that sometimes we have to look back and learn how things were done many years ago. Maybe there was something to be learned from the past. One afternoon, I was able to sit down with Dennis at the station, a restaurant he and his wife Kathy own, to learn a little history about their family and their farm. Meeting the Andersons at their own restaurant couldn't have been more fitting location to conduct my interview. Talk about farm to fork. The Andersons contribute to the full circle of agriculture. They start with good farming and ranching practices and end with safe and affordable meals. Agriculture producers like the Andersons create a healthier environment while ultimately making a contribution to a nutritional food supply. Kathy and Dennis both have an agriculture background. Kathy grew up on a farm near Kingman, Kansas, and met Dennis in college at Kansas State University. Together they have 2 daughters. Although Dennis didn't live on the farm until he was a high school freshman, he is the 4th generation to operate the land that has been in family for years. Dennis started being involved in agriculture early on. In 5th grade, he helped with harvest by running a combine solo, and over the last 15 years, he has been in the process of taking over the family farm. At one point, Dennis was able to travel across Kansas with a harvest crew and learn from other practices across the state. This gave him an opportunity to study what did or didn't work. His harvest crew experience was just the beginning of his search for knowledge that has helped develop his current operation, where he is the sole operator. His own land accounts for 60% of his farming enterprises. He rents additional acreage, which accounts for the 40% of his total operation. As stated, conservation is a family tradition for Andersons. Over 20 years ago, Dennis's father started experimenting with no-till practices, and after Dennis took over some of his grandfather's land in Geary County, they learned that no-till had some great benefits. By using no-till, they were able to take some rough ground and turn it around to be a fertile field. Other benefits the Andersons have seen with this practice is the ability to harvest shortly after a rain. It might not be how much it rains, but how much rain your soil can handle, said Dennis. He has worked with Alex at the NRCS office to learn more about this concept in addition to other innovative programs. Dennis had implemented several practices through the Conservation Stewardess Plan and the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. Because of these conservation programs, he has planted cover crops, rotated mineral locations, does grass monitoring, sent in plant tissue tests, switched to low drift nozzles, and is actively monitoring his soil health test using the Haney test. In 2016, Dennis participated in a cost-share program with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Division of Conservation through the Morris County Conservation District, to build a 2.0 waterway. He seeded it to Western wheat and brome. He was the first individual to try Western wheat in his mix for a waterway. Western wheat is known as a fast establishing grass and is drought tolerant. It will come up in the spring and fall and lay dormant in hot summer months. The grass mix established well, and as a result, the Morris County Conservation District now uses Western wheatgrass in many waterways. In addition to the practices previously described, Dennis has done some tree thinning in the riparian areas using the Kansas Forest Service assistance. He appreciates these programs and says they are kind of the push to do more and try new things. Dennis not only makes good use of program opportunities, but also understands their value from having been on the other side of these services during his time serving on the Conservation District Board. Dennis has a few goals besides the obvious of leaving the soil and land in better condition for future generations. The main goal would be to increase yields by cutting costs while seeing some improvement in generation of more organic matter. He continues to look for new ways to learn by attending extension events, doing research on his own, and working with local conservation district. He says, while it might be a different mindset, you just have to start. It takes some time to plan it out. As Dennis pursues his research and looks to the future, he hopes to find a new crop to throw into the mix of traditional crops grown in this area. He believes that finding a good mix or a rotation is important. He has tried some rye in the past and has seen a variation in weed pressure and believes there are other benefits he can see depending on the variety he introduces. All said, Dennis is driven by the word progressive. He says he inherited it from his grandpa Anderson, who was always pretty progressive. As I interviewed Dennis and Kathy, I believe this is true because more than once Dennis said to me, "You can't keep doing things the way you have." Originally, the farm was primarily corn and soybeans. Then the Andersons started adding other components to their operation. Dennis shared that the first step was the implementation of cover crops for grazing, and then it was leasing of cover crops to local cattle producers, stating getting cattle out there was a great step. After seeing the benefits of cattle on covers, he has started putting his own cattle on the cover crops. There have been cattle on Anderson farms while Dennis was growing up, but they had been dispersed, and now he is gradually bringing them back. Dennis isn't only looking for better options for his farming practices. He is also looking for better ways to operate his cattle herd. This includes calving at different times of year, grazing rotation, and grazing location. He never stops seeking ways to improve. Dennis has yet to use the same mix and uses an online calculator to look at combinations for future ideas. It's always changing. I think it needs to be a diverse mix. It's hard to think that one mix is good for everything. Learning about the history of the Andersons, their farming practices, and becoming acquainted with their family all made it evident why they were selected to receive this year's Bankers Award. I have discovered this agriculture operation to have a welcoming atmosphere and a progressive philosophy, open to share their operational practices. I want to leave you with one quote from Dennis that I hope you remember. "Farming is fun, and there is so much to learn." We congratulate and thank Dennis and Kathy Anderson for their continued work in conservation to help keep the Flint Hills beautiful.